webinar course, shaping the way we teach English. Webinar Wednesday.
Welcome to Shaping the Way We Teach English Webinar Course 16, brought to you by the American English team. My name is Jennifer Hodgson, part of the American English team based in Washington, D.C. There is something very special about this webinar course. Does anyone know what it is? This course, Shaping Webinar Course 16, is all about our academic journal, English Teaching Forum. Raise your hand if you know English Teaching Forum. English Teaching Forum is a quarterly journal written by teachers for teachers all around the world. And this webinar course will be presented by authors from English Teaching Forum. Did you know that Forum has a new cover? You can see it here on the screen. Do you like the new cover? Well, in addition to a new look, there's also lots of great new content. So if you have a chance, go on the website after today's webinar and look at the new Forum. Here you can see the schedule. It has all of the topics for the upcoming course, and again, they are all presented by Forum authors. As many of you know, during these webinars you will hear but not see the presenter, and the way for you to participate is by using the chat box, as you are already doing. And this is where you can ask questions and make comments related to today's topic. You will see myself, moderator Jenny, and moderator Heather, moderator Katie, and moderator Tony in the chat box, but we also rely on you, the webinar community, to help each other. So we won't be able to answer all of your questions today, but there is another place for you to ask questions after the webinar is over. Sometimes your presenter will ask you questions in the form of polls, and these will be multiple choice questions that will appear on your screen. And finally, we know that sometimes you may experience individual technical issues, and if that's the case, if you lose sound, you can try to follow along in the caption pod. Webinar courses are in sets of 6 webinars, and they usually take place every other Wednesday during the course. If you attend at least 4 out of 6 of the webinars, you will receive an e-certificate from your U.S. Embassy or Regional English Language Officer. To ensure you receive your e-certificate, at the very end of the webinar, we will ask you to submit your attendance. We will ask you for a couple details that you can see here on the screen: first name, last name, email address. And then if you are watching this webinar alone, then you just need to enter the number 1. But if you are watching with a large group of teachers in one room together, then you are a viewing host and you need to submit the number of participants. We will give you this information again at the very end of the webinar, but please do note that the attendance system has slightly changed, so be on the lookout for that at the very end. And finally, we hope that many of you have already joined our Ning site, but if you haven't, this is where you can access the recordings, discussion questions, and this is also where you can ask the presenter additional questions after today's session. Today's topic is what happened to listening? Practical tips for increasing listening practice time. So this again is from an English Teaching Forum article. And as teachers, we often think we are doing listening tasks when we are not. And this webinar explores why listening sometimes gets the short shrift in English class and provides tips for bringing fun, low preparation listening tasks to your lesson. If you've attended our webinars before, then I hope you know our presenter is Kevin McCoy. Kevin is a regional English language officer based at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv, Ukraine, and has been a regular presenter with the Shaping webinar since 2010. Kevin likes to use movement and music in language.
Thank you, moderator Jenny. Thank you, American English team in the United States. I'm Kevin McCoy. I'll be your host tonight on this beautiful webinar Wednesday. And I'm coming to you from the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv. Great to see a lot of familiar faces, not faces, names, but I can picture your faces in the chat box. So, listening is our topic for the day. And this comes to you from an article in the newest edition of English Teaching Forum magazine, and the cover looks like this, also available online at American English. Now, I would like you to get a pen and some paper because I'm going to ask you to respond to some listening exercises during the course of this webinar. So it will be great if you have a pencil and paper, you can take part. And I'd like to welcome our viewing sessions. If you're representing a viewing session, can you raise your hand if you're taking part in a viewing session? So we have them in Mexico, in Peru, lots of viewing sessions around the world. Chile, great. So welcome viewing session people. I like to make a couple fun games, especially for those in viewing sessions, so that you can react, be the first person in the group to spot this secret phrase, for example. During this webinar, at some point, you'll hear the words, good listeners. At that point, if you're the first, stand up and say, I'm a good listener. And you will be rewarded with some music. And also, for you visual learners, we're going to have a secret picture today. If you see this image of the Earth, stand up and shout, Earth Day! And again, you will be rewarded with some very uplifting march music. Why Earth Day? Well, today, April 22nd, is Earth Day. So why not celebrate it here on Webinar Wednesday? Now, when you see the picture of the Earth, it probably won't be big like that. That's too easy, right? Good, people are already shouting Earth Day, Earth Day. Great. If you're watching the webinar at home at your desk, don't be shy. Also stand up and shout Earth Day, just to remind your family and perhaps even your neighbors. Listening is our topic. What are our goals today? Well, one of them is to show that many activities that we consider or we label as listening activities actually feature very little listening practice. That is, we might call them listening, but students are not getting a lot of listening comprehension practice. Also, I'm going to offer a lot of practical ideas for easy listening tasks that you can bring into the classroom. That's a big goal here, is to give you ways to increase the amount of listening practice time you do in your classes. And thirdly, because it's Earth Day, we'll have a few activities that feature the green theme in honor of our planet Earth. I really like this planet. Call me strange, but I've always really liked the Earth. Really enjoyed living here. So here's what you can expect in terms of structure. First, we're going to do a traditional listening activity together. Then we'll discuss pre, during, and post-listening, the stages that I think you're probably familiar with, because almost every training on listening pays attention to them. And then we'll have a quick discussion of what is and what is not listening practice, followed by strategies and activities, and this will make up the bulk of the webinar. We will do lots of listening activities together. The audio that you'll hear during the webinar is available either from americanenglish.state.gov or my little website here, English Teachers Everywhere. So don't worry, if you like it, there'll be a way for you to download it. So let's begin. First, we'll do a traditional listening task. When I visit classes or conferences and attend sessions on listening, I often see listening tasks that are designed like this. We hear a text, and then afterwards, the teacher asks comprehension questions. So let's do our traditional listening task. And the text is called Earth Day.
Earth Day happens every April 22nd. I like to think of it as sort of like the Earth's birthday, the day we celebrate our planet and show our appreciation for it. Since we all live here and share the Earth, we really should take care of it, right? Every day. But in case we forget, Earth Day is our yearly reminder. What can you do for the Earth? There are lots of things you can do or stop from doing on Earth Day. You could walk to school or to work instead of driving. You can pick up 10 pieces of litter on the way. You can unplug your phone charger when you're not using it. You can plant a tree. You can use one bottle for water instead of lots of little plastic ones. You can have a photo contest in your class on the subject of nature, and students can use their mobile phones to take the pictures. You can tell your friends about Earth Day and spread the word. You might even sing the song Happy Birthday to Earth. Why not?
Okay, now that you've listened, the teacher asks comprehension questions such as, what is the date of Earth Day? What is something that you can do on Earth Day? How many suggestions did the speaker give you? And you're answering here. Okay, I will not ask more listening comprehension questions. But basically, to be perfectly frank, I don't think that's a very good listening activity. So now I'll ask you, what was not great about that activity? Someone agrees it was not a great listening activity. Okay, there was no task given. Very good. It was kind of long, Daniela in Bolivia says. Wow, kind of long. It's too passive. Excellent. You did not introduce or give a task. Okay, good. Too much memory. Excellent. You are hitting on on precisely the problems with the text. I did not give a specific task for the students other than to listen, right? There was no preparation, no pre-listening, and pre-listening has a little star or asterisk next to it because we'll talk about that soon. Someone said it's kind of too long. Well, that listening text is only 1 minute long. Someone, Maria Bosa, says very monotonous. Okay, 1 minute long, and you are saying it's a monotonous task. Think how your students might feel if the level of their English is not very strong. 1 minute can be a very long listening task. A big disadvantage of this is that the teacher also doesn't know who understands and who does not. When students answer the comprehension questions, the teacher gets a false impression. Maybe 2 or 3 students answer, and the teacher assumes, oh, everybody understood. But that's not necessarily true, is it? The voice of the presenter made me sleepy too. Okay, you're not being very nice to my audio right now, I will say. And often also, when we have a course book and a recording, students will read the text as they listen. That's another traditional task I see often. But I think it's not really a listening task because students don't have to understand the audio because they can read it. They're using reading for the comprehension, right? Which brings us to these 3 stages of listening. Pre-listening, where we prepare or motivate while listening, where we do an activity during listening. And post-listening, where we follow up and maybe go deeper into the subject. At this point, let's take a poll and see what you like to do most in the class. What do you spend the most time on in your classes? Pre-listening is off to an early lead. Oh, wow, look at this. This is fascinating. I'm going to have to grab that screen and save it. Wow, very interesting. So we have about 50, 70%. Okay, say 30% during listening tasks. All right, thank you for that poll. The results of that were quite interesting because we saw that only 30% of the people spend the most time in while listening. That means fully 70% are more comfortable doing pre and post listening, even though the purpose is listening, right? Which leads me to the idea of not listening. We might think in class we have a listening class lesson, but if we spend most of our time on pre and post listening, how much listening practice do our students get? You'll remember there was a pre-webinar poll that said anytime the teacher is speaking English, the students are getting listening practice. 87% agreed with that. I agree that there is some listening practice when the teacher is speaking. But it also means we are probably not preparing dedicated listening tasks if we think the students are getting listening practice organically anytime we speak. Perhaps we're not making listening specific tasks. Let's look at a listening lesson here. This is an actual teacher training seminar in listening that I attended a few years ago, and I wrote down exactly what happened. You can see the subject is animals. Great subject. We did some pre-listening tasks to get the students motivated. The funnest one was that the teacher had a bag full of soft toys or stuffed animals, and we students asked questions to guess what the animals were. For listening, we received a handout with true or false statements, and we could check which ones were true and not. And then we had some follow-up post-listening activities. Does that look like a fun listening lesson to you? Raise your hand if you think that does. Wow, everybody loves it. Okay, great. You can lower your hand too. But let's see what stands out about this. I did have my stopwatch during this seminar, and I timed the sessions. And you can see here something immediately jumps out. The lesson was called listening, and listening was the central task. It's right there in the middle. And yet, how much listening practice did we actually do? 1 minute and 5 seconds. You'll see out of 24 minutes, students got precisely 1 minute and 5 seconds of dedicated listening practice. Many teachers feel more comfortable doing vocabulary exercise or building speaking activities, and less comfortable preparing dedicated listening tasks. Here's another one. It looks really fun. A lesson on pirates. The teacher may have done a lot of preparation, but then again, if the while listening is only 4 minutes and the rest is 50 minutes, what is supposedly a listening lesson is actually featuring a lot of not listening. Great question from Maria in Bolivia. They are listening to each other as well. That's also listening practice. It is to a degree. Yes, students will get some listening practice if the speaking activity is designed well so that it incorporates listening. But generally, when we make a speaking activity, we're more focused on speaking. Once again, there's nothing wrong with this activity, this lesson, I should say. But we should not think of it as a listening activity. Just because we call pre-listening, it doesn't mean that students are getting a lot of dedicated listening practice. All right, so now you know my feelings. I think that many times we are not giving students as much opportunity to listen as they deserve. And I mean dedicated listening activities. Teachers often feel obligated to follow up a listening task with some speaking. But it's okay to have activities that just practice listening. That's how students get better at listening, by practicing. So now let's have some fun. Here are my 5 tips for designing effective listening activities in the classroom. And I'd also like to say I'm very focused on only listening right now, not so much the science of processing messages, negotiating meaning, how the brain sorts out listening. There are many other articles about that. I'm interested in setting up effective listening activities. The first principle that is very important is students do during. That means students do something during the listening. Think back to our Earth Day text. You listened, but were you doing anything? There was no specific task, as many of you pointed out. So we want to assign students a very specific task. Let's try that right now. Here's my introduction to the audio. It's going to be about an animal. Here's your specific task. Fill in those.
He's so funky, he's so funky.
Who's so funky? Who's so funky?
The pangolin. The pangolin. He's so
Okay, well, this is not rocket science. This is a very, very simple listening task. All you do is fill in the blanks, but it's a specific task. Students know what to listen for, right? The word funky, if you don't know it, means original, unusual. And now you know that this song is about an animal called the pangolin. And you see a picture of him. He's unusual, isn't he? You'll also notice I didn't spend a lot of pre-listening time telling you all about the pangolin. But he's a great creature. I'm going to say that right now. And he's very endangered. So that's why he's appearing in our webinar. There you go. He's so funky, he's so funky. Who's so funky? The pangolin. Let's try another dedicated listening task where you're going to check the box if you hear that the fact is true. Do not check a box if you do not hear a true fact. Let's listen to the next part of the pangolin song.
pangolin. He's a mammal who has scales. Baby rides on mama's tail. The pangolin. The pangolin. He's a mammal who has scales. Baby rides on mama's tail. The pangolin. The pangolin. He's a mammal who has scales. Baby rides on mama's tail. The pangolin. The pangolin. He's a mammal who has scales. Baby rides on mama's tail. The pangolin.
He's so funky, he's so funky. Who's so funky? The pangolin. So if you were playing along, this is what your checklist would look like, right? The pangolin is a mammal with scales, and the babies ride on their mother's tails. You might want to introduce some of that language in pre-listening, but it's okay to do it very quickly because we want to keep the focus on the listening. All right, once again, students were doing the activity during the listening. During the listening, not afterwards. I think one of the best children's games, this game is a great model for a well-structured listening activity. In this case, students do during. How many of you have played Simon Says before? Please raise your hand if you've used Simon Says in your class. Great. And don't forget to lower your hand when you're done. Simon Says is a simple game where I give an instruction, the teacher or another student gives an instruction, and the rest of the students will do that activity. For example, when I say raise your hand, that's an instruction. When students do it, then students do that act. So let's try one right now. Those of you in the viewing session, I hope that you'll listen carefully and do what I say. If you're at home, I hope you'll do it too. Instead of Simon Says, in honor of the earth, we're going to say Mother Earth Says. Let's begin. Mother Earth says, put both arms in the air. Mother Earth says, lower your arms. Mother Earth says, close your eyes. Mother Earth says, reach down and pick up a piece of litter. Or, if there's no litter, just pretend. Mother Earth says, fold your arms across your chest. Okay, that concludes our Mother Earth game. Yay! That was fun. So, once again, this is a students do during game. Or more precisely, students do immediately after. They hear the instruction and they do it. What are other things that students can do during the listening activity? Well, we've just seen an example of move. In Simon Says or Mother Earth Says, they follow instructions. I hope you had fun in your viewing sessions. Okay, so movements we can do. Students can also write. We saw that in the Funky Pangolin. We did a gap fill, right? Also known as a close activity. Dictations, I think, are a solid listening activity. Students must understand and then write, although it does involve a lot of writing. Students can also draw. We can tell them what to draw, and we will see examples of that too. And they can also manipulate. They can take objects or pictures or words and move them around. And you'll see in that picture right there, these are all sea creatures. And I might have a team of 5 students, and I could say, player 1, pick up the shark. Player 2, pick up the turtle. Player 2, give the turtle to player 4. Player 4, take the shark from player 1 and give it to player 3. So they would again have to follow the instructions. Very simple to do. So that's the concept of students do during. Don't wait until after a long audio. Design activities where students are doing something during. The next is see it. What does that mean, see it? It means the teacher should see discernible comprehension in the students. Whoa, what's that? Well, I think good activities have the teacher being able to see how much students understand. You can actually see student comprehension. Think back to Simon Says. The teacher says, put your hands in the air. The teacher knows exactly which students understood and which didn't. Now you might say, well, some students just look at the other students. Well, the teacher sees that too, don't we? In this way, you can adjust your listening task to make it more difficult or easier or help students that need help. Rodrigo pointed out that this kind of movement activity is called TPR, Total Physical Response. And that is exactly correct. TPR is following instructions. So now, if you have that piece of paper next to you and a pen, we're going to try a drawing dictation. It's very simple. Get a piece of paper and draw 2 lines on the paper like this. Can you do that? 2 lines. Drawing those 2 lines creates 3 separate spaces on the picture. And that's why I call this activity beach, sea, sky. Imagine every student in the class, 60 students perhaps, has a little paper like this. And now I can dictate what I want them to draw very quickly. For example, I'll say, put a sun in the sky. And you see, here's a student, and she has put a sun in the sky. And then I might say, put a little green plant on the beach. Put a shark in the water. And we can keep giving instructions, and these can be complicated instructions, even for advanced students. And here's a finished product you'll see with all sorts of things written on the... Ah, someone said Earth Day! There's the secret planet Earth! Congratulations! All right, congratulations for all you in the viewing sessions who saw Secret Earth. Now let's get back to our beach, sea, sky drawing dictation. So you can see that the instructions here, put a starfish in the sea, put a turtle in the sea, put some coral at the bottom of the sea, put 4 birds in the sky. We can also introduce quite a bit of writing here. Put a boat in the sea. Write the word boat. Someone from Brazil says this is for children. Yes, it is. But I could also say, put a submarine. Put a. We can do this kind of activity with very complicated vocabulary, as long as it's not really difficult to draw, right? So adults can do this too. Now here's another drawing dictation, and once again I can do it with very simple vocabulary or very advanced vocabulary. I have done this with university students, and I just make it quite advanced. We're going to draw a monster, or well, call it a funny person if you like. Do you have your paper next to you? At the top of your paper, draw an oval. That is the monster's head, or the funny person's head. Okay, next I'd like you to draw an eye, but make the eye in the shape of a diamond. Now don't draw two eyes, I didn't tell you to draw two. Okay, next, draw your second eye, but make it bigger than the first eye. Now at this point, as the teacher, I'm giving you a model. But here I would stop, but because I don't want students just to follow my drawing, I want them to do their own. So next I might say, give your monster a long, skinny neck. Give your monster 2 arms with 4 fingers in each hand. Give your monster a fedora. What's that? That's a kind of hat, right? And once again, I can see the comprehension because as I walk around the class, I can see if every student is drawing according to my instructions. In the end, they might end up with something like this, as a Russian university student drew. There's some complicated vocabulary in here. A roller skate on her left leg, a mermaid tail for the other leg, a polka dot skirt, a watch around his or her neck. This monster has sideburns. So we can do vocabulary. We can also draw maps. Ask students to draw maps. Put a church in the corner of the town, for example. Or we can begin with a map, like this. Do you recognize this city? That's the capital of the United States. That's Washington, D.C. And it's great to give students, maybe in pairs, a map and do a listening activity by giving directions. They can place a coin or a paper clip on one point, and one student will have to give directions to the other where to go. Very easy to do listening tasks with maps. So now we've seen 2 principles. One, we want students to do a specific task during the listening. 2, we want to design the tasks so that we can see which students understand and which don't, every step of the way. Okay. Next is play it again. If you're going to use audios or to dictate something, do it several times. How many times do you think is a good amount to play an audio? 1 time? 3. 3 is the magic number. The magic number 2. Not for me. For me, it's usually 10 to 15 because I like to give students lots of listening practice. And I know they're doing an activity while they listen. Yep, that's right, 10 to 15. Or, here's a better rule than the number of times. Play the audio as many times as the students need in order to succeed at the task. Isn't 10 to 15 too much, Daniela Bolivia? I don't think so. Not if the listening audio is 10 seconds long. Or 5 seconds long. Well, let's do an illustration of playing something many times while there's a do-during task. I like to call this loop listening. An audio loop is one that starts again once it reaches the end. We have actually already listened to a loop today. The second pangolin audio. He's a mammal who has scales, baby rides on mama's tails. That just kept repeating and repeating, which gave you a chance to succeed at the task and lots of listening practice. Hey, and guess what? We're going to go visit the pangolin song again and listen to the third verse. But first, let's prepare you for some of the vocabulary. Slurp. You also might encounter some of these other words during the audio. I think that's enough pre-listening, don't you?
His tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long. His tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long. His tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long. His tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long. His tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long. His tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long.
Okay, how did you do there? Actually, I think we played it 7 times. You heard it 7 times or 6 times. Was that boring to hear it 6 times? I don't think so. You were working. You had a do-during task. Often teachers will play an audio and then sort of give students a chance to write. But I like to just keep it going for that extra listening. And here's the result. And this is not easy vocabulary, is it? This is not for children. That's adult vocabulary. What to do when the song is not catchy? Well, thanks for reminding me, Gloria, because I use a lot of songs. Is that a crime? I like songs. But you can do any song activity with the spoken word, right? You can speak it yourself. You can say, his tongue is really long, he slurps up termites all day long, and ants, he loves ants. You can do that yourself. Here's another, one of my all-time favorite activities. Also a loop listening activity, also one where students do during, and the teacher can monitor their progress every single step of the way. You can put a recording, well, what you're going to do is put these words into order. You'll listen to a song and reorganize these words into sentences. Let's try it. I live in the sea. You live next to me. Please don't throw your trash. Help keep my home clean. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I live in the sea. You live next to me. Please don't throw your trash. Help keep my home clean. Yeah, I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I live in the sea. You live next to me. Please don't throw your trash. Help keep my home clean. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I live in the sea. You live next to me. Please don't throw your trash. Help keep my home clean. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. Oh yeah, I live in the sea. You live next to me. Please don't throw your trash. Help keep my home clean. Yeah, I'm a fish. I'm a fish. I'm a fish. We're all fish. Thank you again, Earth, for making us safe. Okay, so this was fun. This was fun. Now, I don't know how many times I played that. Playing it one time is actually 25 seconds. When I do this with a group of students, I sometimes will go through that 15 times before they complete the task. You heard it, I think, 6 times. Did it take a long time? No. All the while, students are doing during. You can do this with any text, right? Any text. One sentence from your textbook. Headlines for a newspaper. You don't have to sing. You can just read or play an audio. All right, so let's play it again. We like to play things many times so that students can succeed at the task and so that they get more listening practice. Next up is keep it short. This is the key to playing things again, and there are so many advantages to keeping our audios short. Remember the Earth Day text at the beginning of the webinar. That audio was 1 minute long, and people were saying, monotonous, boring, etc. 1 minute. But that's not uncommon. Research shows that young learners, especially, lose their focus after about 30 seconds. And if the task is really difficult, they won't listen at all. So many advantages to keeping it short. They're easy to slip into the class hour. And remember, one of my goals is to increase the amount of listening we do. If teachers think, I don't have time to do a listening activity today, we need to prepare for that, I got to think of pre-listening. No. Take a very short audio, 1 sentence maybe, and see if students can write it down or rearrange the words that you have cut out and put on pieces of paper. Well, shoot, let's try a really short listening activity or two. And I mean really short. How about 2 seconds? 2 seconds is too long for you, for your attention span? I've got one that's less than 1 second. Are you ready? Less than 1 second.
I'll be back. 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 I'll be back.
Okay, we just fit a listening task into the classroom hour. And it took us about 1 second. Listening is not always easy. Let's try
I haven't
this.
got a brain.
How about this one?
I haven't got a brain. 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 I haven't got a brain.
I haven't got a brain. I haven't got a brain. If students find it difficult, because that's fast, right? You can always scaffold it, make it easier by writing one word on the board or 2 words, repeating it yourself more slowly. The important thing is that they succeed at the task. Okay. How about this?
Looks like we came a long way from nothing.
How about that one?
Looks like we came a long way from nothing. Looks like we came a long way from nothing.
Looks like we came a long way for nothing. Yes, that's not really very fair. There was some music that was interfering. And yet, sometimes music does interfere when we're listening, right? Have you ever been to a cafe? So very simple, short listening. How can we find short listening texts? There's lots of them. How about proverbs? How about maxims or famous quotations? Why not take famous first lines from novels or poems or films? Why not dictate a list? Look up some interesting fact online, like what are the 5 most popular foods in America? And then dictate them to your students. Newspaper headlines. And number 7, I really want to draw your attention to piece. What do I mean by that? You don't have to use a whole song. You don't have to use a whole film. You can use a piece of anything. When we listen to the Pangolin, you have not heard the whole Pangolin song. I'm just taking pieces of it. Well, speaking of proverbs or maxims, wise sayings, here's one that I like. And this time, we're giving a little bit of scaffolding, a little bit of language support by providing 3 of the 6 words. Again, I think the specific task is very obvious. Students would write the missing words. Are you ready? Even the longest snake must pass. 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 Simple, huh? So again, don't be afraid to segment longer audios or stop them or repeat them many times if they're very short. We don't have to take an entire audio text, right? So now we're at tip number 5, change it up. What do I mean by change it up? This is the key to teaching in general, I think. As much variety as possible. Do something new, do something different. In most of my classes, I try to have a surprise. And I often try to surprise myself. What can I do today that I've never done before? So change it up. It's all about variety. Variety in audio sources and variety in activity. What do I mean by audio sources? Well, in this webinar, we've seen several. We've had recordings, we've had music, we've had authentic speech, we've had my voice, we've had native speakers, and we've had non-native speakers. Did you know you had an audio text from a non-native speaker? Well, you did, and here it is.
I'll be back. Hasta la vista, baby. Hasta la vista, baby.
Yes, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's not a native speaker of English. Can we learn from non-native speakers? That's a question for you. So, let's take a poll now about the kind of variety that we can use in the classroom with our audio. So in number one, you're going to see we have the teacher's voice or recorded audios. Number two, we have authentic audio. Authentic is not prepared for the classroom, right? Or audio prepared for EFL. In number three, we have which is best, scripted texts or unscripted. Authentic audio, like from a movie or a song, that's actually scripted, right? The people know what they're going to speak. Unscripted is when they don't know, like in a regular conversation. And what's best, native voice or non-native voice? Well, it's good. I'm happy to see that many people are saying both, because I already gave you a clue. I love variety, and I think we could use all of these to advantage. Non-native speakers especially. Most conversations that occur in the world today are between non-native speakers. If you travel from your country to, say, Japan, you're going to speak to Japanese people in English, I imagine. Okay. So great. Yes, I think we can use all of these sources to our advantage. Where can you find audios? They're all over the internet. On americanenglish.state.gov, we have lots of audios. A great place is the English Language Listening Lab, ELLO. ELLO. They have lots of free audios there, and non-native speakers as well. Yeah, thank you, Maria from Bolivia. You knew exactly what I was talking about. There's 3 L's there. Now, back to authentic English. And once again, I think the key is to keep it super short with authentic English, because authentic English can be difficult. It can be difficult. Why? Well, because people in real life don't speak the way words are written. We tend to smash words, mash them together, reduce them. So, if you don't believe me, listen to my dad. Now, I recorded my dad talking about a kitten, how he'd like to bring cats into his bed at night when he was very small. That's a picture of my dad. This is not from a textbook. He's speaking to me and my family, so it's totally authentic, and it's also unscripted. It's not written, right? No, I'm not the baby. No, I was way cuter than that. I think that's my sister. Once again, we're going to go with the standard gap fill activity, because I like gap fills, and also...
Okay, when I was young, probably till I was about 12 years old, I used to take a cat, any cat, to bed with me because they were nice and warm and furry. And
Okay, I will never play things just once because I just don't think that's
Okay.
fair. I want everyone to succeed. So,
Okay, when I was young, probably till I was about 12 years old, I used to take a cat, any cat, to bed with me because they were nice and warm and furry. And
how are we doing? And what I also like to do with authentic text to support listeners is to slow them down. You can get software that will slow down a text. And if you see that listeners are struggling, we can actually play it a little bit slower. And they'll still feel, hey, I succeeded at listening to authentic text.
Little stories at etseverywhere.com.
okay, when I was young, probably up till I was about 12 years old, I used to take a cat, any cat, to bed with me because they were nice and warm and furry.
Okay, so that was a slower version. Did you find that was helpful? Better slower. But students need to know that real people will not slow down. That's right. I think it's worth introducing students to authentic audio, even at a lower level. Will that be scary? Well, remember the keys. Give them a specific task. Keep the audio very short. Okay. You'll see that I think everyone noticed the words here. And what's so important, I think, about listening to authentic audio is that students can see, wow, words are pronounced not the way they are spelled. For example, everyone saw that the first word was probably, right? Well, my father has reduced the pronunciation by a whole syllable. And this is what he says.
Probably.
Prawley. Now, is that discouraging for students to see that, or hear, that the language changes? Well, whether it's discouraging or not, it's reality. And we can introduce them to it, and they will understand, they'll be aware of this kind of word. For example, Wednesday. We never say Wednesday, right? That's a reduction as well. Wednesday. The other words that are missing, number 2, I used to take a cat, any cat, to bed with me. Number 3 would be the word to, T-O, right? Although
To bed with.
really, that word is to bed. To. We don't want to teach students to speak this way, but we do want them to understand. We want them to be prepared to hear the real English language. We can't hide it from them. The last word is and, but of course my father says n, nice and warm and furry. N. So this is a very short audio that introduces us to these kind of reductions and elisions. I also mentioned variety in the way that we set up listening tasks. We've talked a little bit about dictation. Here's a dictation from Tajikistan, and you'll see that 3 teachers are dictating simultaneously to students. That's not fair, is it? Why not? It's fun. In real life, we have to, if we're sitting in a cafe, we have to focus on one speaker, right? And sort of telescope in to that language. And take that out of the noise. So it's great practice and it's a lot of fun. And guess what? It's just variety. It's just one different way. Silvanas in Uruguay says run dictations. Those are great. If you are standing outside of the room, for example, and one member from a team has to go listen to you for 10 seconds and then returns to their team. Danielle says students must concentrate on only one person. Okay, I think, you know, I love variety, and I think there's room in the classroom for activities where we experiment like this. Maybe you're saying that in this, students concentrate on only one person. Yes, we could do it that way. Or we could have them complete all 3 dictations, which are different. And here's another dictation where students are just, it's a normal dictation, except for students are walking around in a circle and writing on the back of the person in front of them. It's not something we do every day, but it's a listening task, and we're trying to bring variety, something fun. Whatever we can do to bring more listening practice into the classroom. Or I would like to inspire you to take whatever it is, your favorite activity, and think, how can we make this an audio activity? How can we bring an audio element into the activity? So here's a particle verb or phrasal verb crossword puzzle. And I used Beatles music. So what we're going to hear is an audio clips, and the Beatles are going to sing short phrases. And from that short phrase, you must extract the phrasal.
One down. No, he'll never come back. She's dressed in black. 3 down. 4 down. How can you rest when you know I'm down?
So this is pretty hard, isn't it? This is advanced. I'm going to give you a second listen and try listening one more time. Can you find the phrasal verb? By the way, phrasal verbs are words like, well, Ais Hamal has one, come back, or throw out, or come up with. Let's listen.
1 down. No, he'll never come back. She's dressed in black. 3 down. 4 down. How can you rest when you know I'm down? When you know I'm down.
Okay, so someone said there are no clues. Well, actually, there are clues. They're audio clues. And the more you get, the easier it is to get the next missing words, just like a real crossword puzzle. But I always want students to succeed, so I give them more clues if they want. If students are having a real difficult time, I might supply them with the visual clues. In this case, one down, we'll see a synonym for return. Synonym for return is come back, as you said. A synonym for don't hurry is take your time. So those are the answers. Some of you came up with them. So this is just an example of how can we take activities that we love and add an audio element to them. Now, teachers often tell me, we like listening, but we have problems. For example, we don't have an audio player that's loud enough. Let's take a moment to do a poll and tell me, what are the barriers that might prevent you from doing listening tasks in the classroom? Barriers to technology issues. Yeah, well, we are familiar with those in webinar land, I can tell you. Time constraints. Interesting, because I think we've addressed many of these barriers right now. Time constraints. We've seen how we can do very, very quick, easy, short audios, right? Lack of resources. Well, we have the teacher's voice. Large class, difficult to manage. I think we've shown strategies today for managing listening tasks. Technology issues. Absolutely. Many teachers don't have an audio player that's very loud or the class is big. But you know what? You don't need one. Often I will do listening in a class of maybe 60 people, and I can use a cell phone that has audio on it. Or maybe 2 or 3 MP3 players. Little ones. Put them in the corner of the room. When students work in teams, they can run up and go to the listening device. Your listening device doesn't always have to reach everyone. You can have students go to it. So anyway, think about those barriers. Say, I think I can overcome some of these barriers. I think we can overcome all of those. Listening is difficult for young students, Lourdes says. Okay. Again, my answer, very short listening tasks. Give them clues and scaffolding. Play the audio as many times as they need to succeed. And just to remind you, that music that you heard before the webinar comes from Sing Out Loud, American Rhythms. There are songs, audiobooks, and guess what? More webinars at American English. And if you like the green theme, my friend Micah Risher and I, Rilo from Peru, we have one called There's an Elephant in the Classroom. And you can find that on our YouTube channel or connect with it at americanenglish.state.gov. Once again, this topic today on listening is a new article in the newly revamped English Teaching Forum magazine. You may have seen some hard copy issues, or you can go online at americanenglish.state.gov. I hope that you have learned something today and that you will take some of this advice so that your students can become good listeners and that you will increase listening practice time. Did anyone notice the secret word? Good listeners? I did. I'm a good listener. All right, let's make our students good listeners as well. This is an exciting new part of Forum Magazine called My Classroom, and each issue will feature a teacher and talking about her life and her classroom in another country. Now that you've seen so many audio activities, do you think you could make a little audio activity out of something like that, a text? Just make sure students are doing something during the audio. Keep it short. Say it several times. So I'd like to thank you, everybody. And at the beginning, our audio on Earth Day mentioned you could sing Happy Birthday to Earth. Let's do it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Earth. Happy birthday to you. Come on, sing along in the viewing sessions. You can do it. Don't be shy. Happy birthday to you, planet Earth. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Earth. Happy birthday to you. Webinar Wednesday. Yeah. Happy listening, everybody. Happy Earth Day. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Kevin. That was a wonderful presentation. We all had so much fun singing along and playing Simon Says and taking the polls and listening to all that fun audio. Thank you so much. I think we all learned a lot about how we can increase listening time in our classroom. So thanks so much. And of course, thank you, audience members, for joining us today and for participating and having a great time with us as well. And please join us May 6th for our webinar on spoken grammar presented by Amanda